Let's get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavit Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Britavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusantathami Bhagavath Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Parnaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Drutaduhe Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rutra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangha Padakramo Panishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyana Vastita Tatkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam Navidusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So welcome everyone to this next session of 8th chapter. This chapter is called, Akshara Brahma Yoga. It is definitely a chapter where we are taken into the next sort of phase of our journey, where for all of us, where we have done what we have to do in this world, and slowly, how do I start to focus on really what my goal is, goal of life? And this, as a human being, is the only way that we can actually understand the ultimate goal of life. Animals cannot do it, but we who have been endowed with this wonderful set of this human body can actually do it. So that's how the whole journey of Bhagavad Gita is leading us to, starting with Arjuna's problem, which is the kind of issues that we face day to day, in and day out. But in and through all this, how do I recognize the essence of our life? In 7th chapter, where we had this beautiful shloka, which is Sutre Manigana Eva, so the essence of life needs to be understood. And for us, what is the totality? How do I see the whole world as me alone? So that Ishvara principle, which I see in and through everything, is me alone. So that is the point that in the 8th chapter is really being worked on. So that is what Krishna is telling Arjuna, because Arjuna's question at the last, towards the end of 7th chapter was, how does a jnani practice spirituality? How does he look at the whole world? So that is where we saw in the 7th chapter at the end, Krishna introduces about 7 different terms. And those 7 terms in the 8th chapter, he will actually resolve it into one particular factor. And that is a part that we have looked at so far. So any questions or any thoughts on this so far? Anything. It could be, so far, how does this journey of Bhagavad Gita, does that make sense from the 1st chapter to the 8th? Any questions? If not, also no problem. I just wanted to open that because this is a nice reflection time, because if there's any questions connected to so far what we have studied, because you will see each one is very aligned to the next chapter, So in the 8th chapter, basically, as we've talked about before too, it is taking the last 2 shlokas of the 7th chapter. So the last 2 shlokas of the 7th chapter deals with how does a jnani look at the world and how does a jnani practice his sadhana. Where does his mind lie, So for that reason, Krishna actually talks about this 6 terms, which is, Brahman, Adhyatman, Karma, then Adhibhutam, Adhidaivam, and Adhiyagnyam. So after saying those things, he finally says, at the end of the day, or for all of us, actually, if we are really progressing in life, and if I want to know what should I be doing at this stage of my life, So this is where Krishna's prescription has been. Of course, we go through the 4 stages, Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha. And for most of us joining in this one, we are actually in the Vanaprastha stage. In the Vanaprastha stage, we slowly have to start to taper down our attachment to the world. It's not that we should stop doing what we are doing. That is not, because each one of us, because of our prarabdha, we are where we are. So my journey may be different than somebody else's journey. That person's journey is different from somebody else. And each one of us have our own activities connected with it. But at the end of the day, Vanaprastha is the time where I slowly detach myself. When we say detach myself, it is mental. It's karma sannyas. We call this karma sannyas, which is I will be doing everything what I'm doing, but yet I'm not attached to what the fruit of my action is. So I'm just an instrument. So that part of it at this stage really becomes very important, because slowly as I start to becoming an instrument, slowly even that aspect of becoming an instrument then finally dies down as I get to the next stage of sannyas. So that is why this is kind of a very important aspect, because in this chapter you start to see how all these terminologies that Krishna will describe will then taper to this one aspect of Ishvara. So I'll just chant the first 4 shlokas, and the first 4 shlokas will take it to this concept of that movie projector example. Today I've put some connection of the analogy of the movie projector to the terminologies. Okay, so we'll do that. Arjuna uvacha kim tad brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma purushottama adhibhutam cha kim proktam adhidaivam kim uchyate adhiyagnyam katham kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale cha katham Jnyosi niyatatmabhihi. Shri Bhagavan uvacha aksharam brahma paramam svabhavodhyatma uchyate bhuta bhavodbhava karaha visarga karma sangitaha adhibhutam ksharo bhavaha purushashchadi daivatam adhiyajnyohamevatra dehe deha pritamvara. So in the 4 shlokas, in the first one, Arjuna is asking the same question that was asked at the end of the 7th chapter, or Krishna had told him the terminologies there. So Arjuna is asking, what is Brahma, what is Adhyatma, what is Adhibhuta, and what is Adhideva. Then in the next one, he's asking, what is Adhiyajna, and then what happens when at the time of departure from this body. So by now, Arjuna is at least sort of convinced that there is something, that when somebody dies, there is something that is happening. So he wants to know what exactly it is, right? So that's when Krishna then answers the questions for he defines what Brahman is. And then he defines how Brahman is connected to Adhyatma. And then he defines what, how does all these jivas come into be, what is this world of and what is the cause of it? So bhuta bhava udvakaraha. Then visarga means all the actions are those actions which are offered as sacrifice. So he's connecting all these factors here. And then he continues to show that here, you see Adhyatman as a single entity, but over here, Adhibhutam, which refers to all the entities in the world. And then next one, he says, they are all kind of ruled, or they are come to life because of this Adhidaivam. Adhidaivam is basically, you can think about the Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is a name is given to that consciousness in the subtle elements. So at the mind and intellect level, for all of us, imagine if all the mind and intellect were connected together. So for now, we can actually see the whole world, right? We can see the whole world with all its individual components. When we combine all the individual components, we call that as the world in the gross part of it. That is what I can see, what I can feel, all that I can see, and I tell that is a world. But there is another aspect which we know exists, but I cannot see it, correct? And that is my mind and intellect. So if I combine all the mind and intellect, okay, that is this aspect of Hiranyagarbha. Okay, so sometimes, we say, like in a family, 2 or 3 people will do the same kind of things. Why is that? Because at the mental level, you're connected, or somebody doesn't have to express any emotion, but you can immediately feel that something is not right. Did that person actually show by action? Not really. But at the mentally, you can actually feel it, right? So there is a connection at a mental level for all of us, and that is that Hiranyagarbha. And Adhiyajnam
I have a question. Why do you call it gross? Hiranyagarbha cannot be gross because it's mental and intellectual level, right? You're frozen? Am I frozen?
No, Sunita is frozen.
I think, yes.
I think we should wait a minute. You are on mute, Sunita.
No, I think I got dropped,
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. I was asking some question. Did you get that or no?
I just asked, I only heard one part of it, which is, 1 second. You can see me, right? But you can't see my screen, isn't it?
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, this. 1 second. Yeah, tell me, you said what?
You said mind and intellect together form the various, all put together is Hiranyagarbha. Okay.
Correct.
And at the same time, you said it's gross element. How can it be a gross element? It has to be a subtle. It has to be a subtle element, right?
Correct. Correct. No, I referred to the world as the gross, and the mind and intellect as subtle.
Right.
And then I said, individually, I am a jiva.
Correct.
Okay. And collectively, I'm the world. So Adhibhuta means all the beings put together.
Right.
Okay. And Adhidaiva is all the mind and intellect put together. That is also subtle. Yeah, that is subtle. Okay. Yes, that is subtle. Maybe by mistake I said gross. No, gross. That was not.
That's I heard as gross. That's a
gross word. Correct. No. Sorry. Okay. No. Thank you for referring to it. So. Yeah. You can see one screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the 4 terms we discussed. And so finally the 6 terms are this. So Brahman, Jiva, and then karma, which are actions performed by the individual. Now the same things, if you look at it from the macro level. So micro level, we have the Jiva. The Jiva does actions, right? And so keep Brahman separately. Okay, Brahman is formless and everything, but then you have this individual self, which is a jiva, and then karma is the action performed by the jiva, by the individual. Adhibhutam is the collection of all the jivas. Adhidaivam is a collection of all the subtle element of mind and intellect. Okay. And then Adhiyajnam is the collection of actions of the whole thing that is happening. Okay. Now we will see this, we'll come to this thing again. I will just use that movie example.
You just made this week, right? This is very good. Yeah. Oh, very nice.
I had actually shown this 4 sessions ago when I did the last chapter 7, but I brought that because I wanted to explain the movie example now, with a little more to connect it. Because this movie example, I don't know how much, you were able to absorb the subtlety of that message. So today I connected the movie example to the terminologies, and then I want to explain that with life, and then of course, because the crux of that whole understanding is here about how, now you may ask, why should I know all these terminologies, right? It's almost like before we started to make words, we started to learn the alphabets, and then we learned the words, and then we made the sentence, and then we made paragraphs, and then we made stories, correct? But then what happens is when you go through from the alphabets to the words, to the sentences, to the stories, right? Then what happened for all of us, we get so immersed in the stories that we forgot from where we came from, So in order for us as a human being, if we have to evolve, if we have to progress in life, which itself, is a kind of a thing. I mean, if you ask our youngsters, they will say, yeah, progress, doesn't that mean that I have to get the next best job and everything? All that is great as far as Grihastha Ashram is concerned. But once it comes to Vanaprastha and Sannyas, I have to taper down. I have to go back from where I came from. Correct? So that is why what Krishna is doing is, Krishna has exposed us to all the problems that we are going through, which we don't recognize that we are actually going through the problems. So he's trying to show all that. Then he explained to us about the finally meditation chapter we saw in the 6th chapter at the individual level, right? In this chapter, you are actually going to see meditation in a totality, in a much bigger scale. So that is why this chapter is very important, because I have to, I may say that, I want to sit and meditate in my room. And if I meditate, I'll be calm. Okay, great. But the minute I open my room and I go out, I'm now exposed to all the sounds and everything. I can't say, oh my God, you should not disturb me, or, all kinds of disturbance come, not just from the sounds, but my own attachment to the world, correct? All that causes a disturbance. So how can I now meditate in a way that I will be forever in meditation? So I have to accept the world also as me, and I have to see the world as an extension of me. Finally, I have to accept that the world is me. Once when I accept it that way, then my mind can really become calm. So that is why Krishna is first, took us through the through kind of a sadhana for us at the intellect, at the individual level. Once the individual level was concerned, now we are coming to learn the whole world, which we did in the 7th chapter by the effects. We came to learn about the mountains, the rivers, the sun, the moon, and everything. And then he also explained about the essence of all those, which he did in the 7th. In this chapter, he is now breaking it down to even more subtle level. So in order to explain the subtlety, he first wants to show how this world is actually an illusion. Okay, we are the ones who are looking at the world as something totally real, which is true. I mean, it's not as if the world is not there at all. The world is very much there. Only thing is that my mindset in how I'm looking at the world has to change. Today, my mindset with regard to the world is, this world is so real. The world is giving me a lot of problems. The world is giving me so much of attraction. The world is giving me sorrow, all that. So to negate that, we have to change our mindset. So how can I change the mindset? That is where I wanted to bring this movie example. Okay. So here we have learned all the 6, that terminology. So in this movie example, let us just simply, I just use this movie called Up. I don't know if you saw this Disney movie called Up. Very nice. I remember seeing this a while ago. So the idea behind here is that here you see this movie projector. The projector is projecting some bright light on a strip of film here. And this strip of film contains a lot of images that are shot by, a movie camera before, or sometimes in the case of this Disney movie, by an animator who would have drawn all these pictures, right? So all this is done. Then the movie is like the film thing is frozen and it forms this film. And then when this film is projected through this projector, the images are projected on that screen, which you can see. And because of the fast speed of the images, now you see that illusion of a movement is created, correct? And you see that, because of that movement, suddenly you feel that, something has come to life. Actually, nothing has come to life, isn't it? It is all in the strip. But we react to it as if, the whole thing has come to life. And we get attracted to it, we get attached to it, we get affected by it. All this is happening, correct? So in this, how do we look at this? Now let's look at the exact thing. So this light which is projecting, okay, this light is, now we can look at it as, first, Krishna starts to explain in the first third shloka, right? He says, what is Brahman? So that Brahman is nothing but this light. Okay, look at this as, so Brahman is this light. Light is always there. Light is imperishable. Light doesn't have a form or a color or anything. Actually, even this light, right? It acts only when there is some surface on which it on which it falls. Otherwise, you don't even know that there is light. Light itself needs a surface for it to be reflected, for us to know that it's light. I mean, it is that pure. There is like really nothing associated with it. And that is how you look at what Brahman is. Okay, there's no shape or attributes, etc. So, and also another thing is that if you look at this room also, this light is like a witness to everything that is going on, So that is Brahman. Now next, but that light falls on the strip, and because of which this whole thing comes into play, You see this boy in this movie Up, he's dancing and everything, So this light has actually formed in this form here. And so this is the Adhyatma. So because of that individual light, this boy is able to dance. Okay. So, and that he's able to dance, he has his own set of attributes and everything. And that is the Adhyatma. Now, in order for the Brahman to, I'm just using it very loosely, all these terms, in order for the light to attach on the strip and form this one, there is a lot of action involved. First, that animator would have created the movie script. Then this projector is using the mechanism by which it's, that is the aspect of karma. Okay. So karma is this process. So it is all the process that creates this movie here. Okay. Now, this is the same thing which and the macro level. Okay. At the macro level, you have, you can think about all the processes that happens in order for this entire world to come. At the individual level, it is karma. At the macro level, for this whole world to be what it is this Ishvara which is really making it happen. Okay. Now, coming to what is Adhibhutam, all the things. If in this world you can see, you can see some buildings at the back. Everything connected to that, that is the Adhibhutam, all the things put together. Okay. And then so this Adhibhutam is again perishable. Like, when you go from one frame to another in the movie, right? You will see completely a different scene altogether. So this one has to go before something else can come up. So this Adhibhutam is always perishable in this case. Now, what is Adhidaivam? Adhidaivam is the, like I said, the mind and the intellect of the total thing, which is bringing the whole thing to life. Okay. Otherwise, this whole Adhibhutam would be totally inert, right? So this so the whole mind and intellect composition of it, which we called Hiranyagarbha, is the one which is bringing this boy into in such a joyous form. And the whole collection together, the way it works, is the Adhidaivam part of it. So the Adhiyajnam is the activity. So just to keep in this one, we talked about Adhidaivam is the mind and intellect part of it, which brings to life. But what is the force that is making it happen? Okay, that is Adhiyajnam. Now, why is it called Yajna? You may ask, what is, why can't they call it as Adhikarma? We can call it Adhikarma. Why are we calling this Adhikarma? Everywhere else we have done this. Now, this word Yajna is very important because Yajna means sacrifice, correct? So, in this whole world, if anything good has to come out, anything progress has to happen, that can happen only when there is a sacrifice, sacrifice, which the terminology sacrifice means that which is done without keeping in mind what is in it for me, it is done for the collective thing. Just like we have this rain. When rain falls on the ground, the water doesn't think, why am I falling? It just falls by itself. It becomes a river. Then the whole thing evaporates. Again, it goes back and becomes the clouds. And then at a certain time, the clouds again becomes rain. So the whole thing is like a cycle, right? So too this growth. If you look at all the trees and everything, all the nature, everything that is happening happens because of this yajna spirit. And so too, at the level of our human beings, if this whole world is kept alive, okay, if there is some progress, if there is something good coming out, it is because of the yajna of a few of the human beings, a few of the Mahatmas, who actually, because of their tapas, because of their own sacrifice and everything, this world is really being maintained. Okay, so that is the aspect of what Krishna here wants us to understand with all these 6 terminologies. So is that clear? Any questions here before we move forward? Because these are very powerful terminologies. And the reason to bring this movie example is to show at the end of the day, our life is really, we place a lot of value to each one of our actions. But going back to this movie strip thing here, ultimately, they're all perishable, There is my example here. Or you can look at even each one of these frames as you move on to the next, they have to die before the next frame can come up. There is, I don't know, this movie project example can be elaborated for so much, like even you can see the number of strips that is needed before this particular scene can be formed, right? I don't know how many of you have seen the Disney lab in Florida. When you actually go to one of the museums in Florida at Disneyland, you will see for each, I remember I think in one of my Bhajagovindam slides or something, I had given you the number of frames that is required in order to come up with one scene. It's quite a lot, actually. I don't know, maybe 200 frames or 300 frames that the animator actually has to draw in order to finally show that there is movement. So too, if you take that example to our lives, we take some of these small things in our life and we blow it up in our mind and think that, oh my God, there's such a big problem. Ultimately, everything perishes. We know that, and we have to move on. And that is what is this thing of anitya, we are living in an anitya world, not a real world. But we get so caught up in it. So ultimately our whole movie is like this movie projection. And now you can see with this just simple 6 terminologies, this entire world of our life is explained. No?
Harvam, one question. So other than Brahman, everything is perishable. Is it right?
Other than Brahman, everything is perishable. Exactly. That is what in the 7th chapter, also when we learned about, what is that? The 2 terminologies we came about, right? Is it?
How about consciousness?
No, consciousness is Brahman.
Yeah. Oh, all put together is Brahman. Okay.
Not all put together. Actually, ultimately, it's almost like a simpler example to like space. Space is everywhere. But then I say space is there in this cup. Then space is there inside this pen. Correct.
Right.
So just like that, Brahman is like the space, but that same space inside this cup is actually the Adhyatma. Okay, it's a space inside is the Adhyatma, but this whole cup with this one is the Jiva part of it.
Thanks. Harvam, also the movie screen is the Sakshi, which is the witness. Is that the right way to put it?
Yes, you can. So at the end of the day, you can, when there's no movie going on, right, you have just a screen on which this light is being projected. So that is, there's nothing there. So that is ultimately, you can say that's Sakshi, or you can say that is Brahman, which is a witness to everything that is going on.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So you said consciousness is Brahman, right? But
Correct.
each individual person has consciousness, right?
Correct. Yes,
So
so
can
it
we
is.
say that is Brahman? No,
You can
individual level we cannot call it Brahman, right?
Yeah, so individually we call that as Adhyatma or Atman. You can call it Atman or Adhyatma.
Okay.
Okay. So now that we are introduced to the 6 terminologies, okay, now you may wonder, why did we go through such an elaborate understanding of all the terminologies? The whole idea is, like as I said, we start with alphabets, and with alphabets we make words and sentences and everything, right? In our journey too, we start with alphabets, and interestingly, the word alphabet in Sanskrit is called aksharam, right? Aksharam means which is imperishable. But point being that for us to, we should be able to go through using these alphabets. We have lived our life. As we taper down, we need to come back to the basics, right? So, but in order to come to the basics, we have to first clearly understand what this world is from a point of view where I can start to dissolve it. I can start giving it up. So that is why we went through the 6th part of it. Finally, the idea is, ultimately, everything is nothing but that Ishvara. That is the part that he's trying to come to a conclusion. Whether it's Adhyatma, there's a spelling mistake here. This M is not needed. Adhyatma, which is Brahman we said Brahman, but that essence in that boy, which is making him dance around, that is Adhyatma. Then Adhidaiva, which is, of course, a collection of things in the Adhibhuta, and then Karma and Adhidaiva, the collection of all the intelligent principle. All that is nothing but Ishvara. So Krishna, he asserts saying that Adhyatma Adhidaiva, nothing but that Ishvara. And for us, it is very important to know, ultimately, there is nothing but in this world is Ishvara. But we are the ones who have attributed that this world is full of these beings and everything. But they are, at the end of the day, nothing but Ishvara. And that is the part which he wants to make us understand, that ultimately everything is Ishvara. Now one may ask, what is the difference between Ishvara and Brahman? Ishvara is the one which is with form. If I look at everything in this world, it is nothing but that Ishvara, which is in the form of my friends, Ishvara in the form of my family, Ishvara in the form of my company, Ishvara in the form of the animals, the birds. Everything is nothing but components of that Ishvara. Totality is nothing but Ishvara. So Krishna is going through, that in order to resolve the whole thing, finally to bring it to the fact that ultimately everything is nothing but Ishvara. Okay. So if that is the, if it is that Ishvara, so then Arjuna's question is, tell me, how can I really get to Ishvara at the time of my death? Right? So that's his question. Tell me, how do I get to Ishvara? Because, so even though there were 7 questions asked at the end of the 7th chapter, now you may think that, out of the 30 shlokas in this chapter, he's going to devote 2 shlokas or 3 shlokas for each of the questions. No, he doesn't do that. Within this 4 shlokas, he just says, okay, it's over. I've told you. Now everything is Ishvara. So then Arjuna is asking, well, then if that is the case, if all I need to know is Ishvara, how do I really attain this Ishvara? So that is then, so the whole of 8th chapter is about only this question. And Krishna, of course, immediately, he gives the answer out. He doesn't say, okay, let me tell you how you can attain Ishvara. These are the steps and all that. He always, such a beautiful way of teaching too, right? I mean, here, Krishna first gives him a very, very smart answer. And we see that all the time. In the 2nd chapter also, he will immediately say, what is consciousness? And then he will break it down. So here too, he says, okay, if you want to know how to attain Ishvara, he says, it's very simple, really so simple, So, but before I give the answer out, what do you think he would have said? I'm just throwing this as a question to all of you.
At one point you said, Ishvara is everywhere. We are Ishvara, everything is Ishvara. Then
Correct.
why does he ask, how does one attain Ishvara? We are already Ishvara, right?
Correct. But let me ask you that question back to you, Geeta, then. If we know everything is Ishvara, are we really recognizing the world as Ishvara? You and I, we, that is the whole point of this Bhagavad Gita is, this is a lesson for us, right?
He says, how do I attain Ishvara? When we are Ishvara, why do we attain Ishvara?
Because it's a very, you hit the nail on the head where you are asking the question 1, attain.
The answer to your question is no. Sunita ji, the answer to your question is no.
No, correct. Exactly. We do not, we are not convinced that it is Ishvara, right? That's what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Still we are saying like I and mine kind of a thing. So
correct. Exactly. Fundamentally, that is the one. So, Madhuri, you hit the nail on the head in this case, where this question of how does one attain Ishvara, it's a very powerful question, because here the death, even though Prayana Kale is what he's asking, Prayana Kale, at the time of my death, which means I'm thinking that when I give up this physical body, correct? But actually it doesn't have to be what you said just now, which is I and mine. Where does I and mine come from? It is because of my own ego, correct?
Yeah,
because
I'm
my
separating.
Individuality. Yeah, individuality. So at the time, this one can only attain Ishvara when I give up my ego, when there's a death of my ego. Correct?
Yes.
That's not necessarily at the time when I'm dying. Of course, there is another, the answer is, I don't want to have any more births. I don't know when I take birth next time how my life is going to be, By God's grace and the blessings of my elders, I have a good life here. So let me make use of it and try to attain that Ishvara, try to understand that everything Ishvara and live it. As Meenakshi said, yes, today I don't know that I don't live as if I'm Ishvara. But if I truly understand the concept of Ishvara, my actions will speak very differently. How I act in this world, the love and compassion that I show to every human being will be so automatic. I won't do it because the scriptures are telling me, I'll be such a beautiful human being. So that is the part that he's really coming to finally, So the answer that Krishna gives Arjuna is, one can attain Ishvara only if one remembers Ishvara. Okay. I'm sure you'll all agree with me when we say that it's easier said than done.
So
Very easy.
if I keep thinking I am Ishvara, then we attain Ishvara. Maybe.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But yeah, go ahead. I think Meenakshi, you want to say something?
I would say no, because just by saying that I'm Ishvara, you cannot be. As you said, you have to give up everything, me or mine. Nothing in this world is mine.
Mm-hmm.
Only then you can try to get to the path of attaining Ishvara. Is that correct?
Correct. That is true. That is true. But again, the idea is to be able to give it at the mental level.
Yes.
The reason I say that is, one may give up everything, run away from America to India, like I did, right? I mean, I just ran away. But after coming here too, if I still keep thinking about, my life in US and, all my house, it was so beautiful, I gave all that up and I'm here. No, it doesn't happen. You have to, so I'm just giving that as a practical example for myself, but you know what I mean, that, if I have to run to Himalayas and give up everything, and there also I think about, what did I give up? I want to go back. It doesn't happen. So that's why the mental level is what our religion always says. We have to give it at the mental level, slowly start to disengage ourselves. So being there and giving up still. So this is exactly why you see Krishna, again, tying up all these points. He is trying to tell us at the end of the day, it's nothing but, we have to think about that all of them leads, just like how, this example I just put it here is how a mother with a child, when the child is doing everything, I'm at that age, for the mother, the child is everything. Even for a second, she cannot not think about what her child is doing, so that level of thing I need to understand about Ishvara. Okay, that everything is ultimately nothing but Ishvara, and I just have to and this one beautiful shloka in Bhagavath.
Very nice picture, so adorable.
Yes, I know. But then what happens when we look at a picture like this? Immediately I think about my own grandchild or maybe my own child, right? So that is exactly why I put this, is to disengage ourselves even from that part of it. The example was given only as a way to show that if I can think about just like that attention on that child, that same thing I have for the entire world, So this is why in the 6th chapter, we were exposed to meditation, because that meditation technique was given to us to practice how we should be in the world. And then once we do that, then the idea was take it to the broader, greater world and follow that same meditation technique. So we need to constantly keep practicing Ishvara. So to your point, Geeta, it is every time I see somebody, I think that person's Ishvara, this person's Ishvara, that person's Ishvara. If I say that first, and then I say, this is Gita, then what happens is I will not think about all the wrong things that Gita did for me or whatever, all the great things that Gita did for me. I will only think that person's Ishvara. So that is on a very simplistic level, it helps us to get over our I and my and likes and dislikes and all that. But at a higher level, I tend to finally dissolve everything into this Ishvara component. And when I do that, then, yeah.
Hari Om Sunitaji, this is Kanchana.
Kanchana.
The question I have is how does this, in this process, how does the karma play? So if you have a baggage of vasanas from the past, and now if you're motivating towards that intention of towards the Ishvara, of seeing Ishvara in everything, right? How does the karma play in that picture?
So there are two aspects to it. So I have this point already put up here. You perform the duty consistent with your Swadharma. Okay. Swadharma meaning that one will recognize what my duty is, whether it's a mother or whether I'm an employee or whether it is this one. I will start to force myself to play the role which has been given to me. And when I do that, my previous baggage, like you pointed out, my previous karmas, which is all, the word karma here is used as previous baggage, that all will slowly start to purify, in the sense, like, for example, if my previous baggage was such that I did something only with an expectation of a result, for example. Now, once I recognize that everything is Ishvara, that will purify my action. I will still perform the action, but my focus will be on the action and not on the result of the action.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's more like changing your thought process towards.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. So if you think about what is that prarabdha that I came from, that prarabdha was formed because of my habitual action. I was constantly habituated to do an action only in such a way that I seek a result. But by looking at everything as Ishvara, I will now slowly start to focus more on the action and not on the result. And slowly my baggage will reduce. Okay. As I move forward, I'm actually offloading. It's like, when I'm flying in the balloon, right? They offload some things in order for the balloon to go higher. So too, when I think about everything as Ishvara, then what happens is my actions becomes more perfect and I'm offloading more and more of my previous baggage, which allows me to evolve higher.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Meenakshi, you wanted to say something?
No, not right.
Okay. So that is what the first 4 shlokas say. And then from shloka 5, because Arjuna asked this question, how can I remember Ishvara, or how can I attain Ishvara, right? So that's why from shlokas 5, basically, he says, Antakale cha mameva sparan muktva kalevaram yaprayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshaya. Where he says, at the end of the line, even at the very end, if a person remembers me, there is absolutely no doubt that he will come to me. And then in shlokas 6, it may seem that it's really so straightforward. If I just remember him, I can just do it. But, Krishna is warning him, saying that yam yam vapi sparan bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tame vaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. So on one hand, he says, if a person keeps on thinking about Ishvara, of course he will reach there. But let me tell you that if somebody keeps on thinking of something else, like for example, towards the end of his life, this person suddenly thinks, oh, I really missed having this Rasagolla in Kolkata. I'm just giving that example because I just came back from Kolkata and they were just mishti doi and all these wonderful sweets. Suppose somebody tells you, okay, you have to go to Kolkata to have mishti doi or whatever. And you never had the chance. And you're thinking that, oh my God, right now I'm going to, give up this body, and I never had this chance to try it. Please don't forgive me if I'm making a little thing about it. But my point is, yam yam vapi, so whatever I think at the end, that is what is going to take me forward. That is what he's trying to say. And that is why, as you think, so shall you become. The point is, I have to be careful that even a little bit, I cannot give room in my mental process to allow a different thought to come in. How can we do that? Is only by, it's 100%. 100% I have to think about Ishvara, which is so tough, right? So that is what he's trying to show here. So in Shloka 7, when he gives the ultimate teaching, he says the key thing about it is with the mind and intellect. So it's not just my actions. So by charity, I can do a lot of things. I can say I'm going to give so much to the temple, I'm going to give so much here, all that. But in the name of the Lord. But here he's saying that is not enough. He says with the mind and intellect. And then he gives this word here, fight. So he's talking to Arjuna. And this is sometimes, the shloka is very misunderstood from Bhagavad Gita. That Krishna is telling Arjuna, okay, you go and fight and kill all the people. That is not what he's trying to say here. Since this message is for Arjuna, he's saying he fight, But for all of us, it is the same thing. Whatever I'm doing, he says, in and through everything that I do, I have to think it's only Ishvara. I'm doing it for Ishvara, and Ishvara is doing through me. So that is why the word karma is also very important. It is Ishvara. I'm doing only Ishvara's work. And even in the whole world, it's nothing but it is only Ishvara who's acting. So constantly the thing for me is, that is exactly my sadhana. Sadhana is not that I have to give up what I'm doing and run away to the forest or anything, but the idea is in and through my own swadharma. Whatever I have come here to play a certain role, I have to do that very, very well. So that is the idea. So then in shloka number 8 on, he gives, how do I meditate upon this Ishvara? So you can meditate upon Ishvara by either on the form of Ishvara or on the shlokas, or on the aspect of Ishvara. So in the name and the form, both of them, right? So here he gives in the next 8, 9, and 10, he gives about 3 different ways of meditation, So we'll chant the shloka. I think I'm running out of time here. It's almost 2 minutes to 7, right? 2 minutes to 9:30 for you. Abhyasa yoga yuktena Chetasāgnānya gamina Param Purusham Divyam Yati Parthanu Chintayan. So he says, so this is the one meditation practice. So he says, by the steadfast practice of habitual meditation, Chetasa, the mind, na anya gamina, with the mind not moving towards any other thing. So just focusing that meditation on just this one form of Ishvara. But what is the form? Paramam Purusham Divyam. Divyam, resplendent. Purusha, that ultimate Purusha. Paramam, that supreme. Meditating upon it, he goes to it. So, just thinking about that great, like even Narayana, for example, imagining that Narayana, that absolutely, now I can see why people go to Tirupati, for example. When you go to Tirupati and you see this Lord Venkateshwara in so resplendent, your mind is just focused on that Lord, right? So he gives this, and this is actually, the technique which is already given in our 6th chapter. which is Abhyasa Yoga, where it is just focusing on one thing without diverting to anything else. Every time my mind goes somewhere, bringing the mind back. So it is that form of the deity that he's asking us to focus upon. So basically, the idea is to cultivate the thought habit that, there is just one aspect, one Ishvara there, and that Ishvara in the form of this Lord is in front of me. And my focus has to be on that form of the Lord, who's so brilliant, who's so resplendent. And when that happens constantly, that becomes a thought habit. And by doing so, I start to still my mind. And then once I do that, I can ultimately focus on what that formless is. So there is no dependence on anything external here. But then this requires this purity of mind. Yeah, Geeta, you had some question?
Yeah. No, supposing there is a thief, he wants to rob a place because he wants to have money for his family, right? With good intention, he goes and he say Ishvara, Ishvara and do the rob. Though that thing is wrong, he still keeps saying Ishvara, Ishvara and does that work. Is that, I don't know whether it's the right question. I'm just asking a question.
No, so that previous shloka, which says yam
Previous
yam.
one. I'm going back to the previous one.
Correct. So basically, in that case, he is not really looking at that as Ishvara and robbing, right? Well, like for example, when we had this example of Valmiki, when he was robbing, he didn't think about that who is Ishvara. He was just robbing and everything.
Right.
And that is why we had Narada who came to him and said, just do Mara, Mara. He knew that he cannot even say Rama, Ishvara, Ishvara in the form of Rama, right? He says Mara, 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 So just changing the mind of the thief. So the thief is really, there is I and my in it. There is that ego. So he's not really thinking, I don't think the thief is robbing with the
Ishvara in mind.
Ishvara in mind, exactly.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So the next shloka, which is, we'll just do this one shloka and then we'll continue next week. So this is in a different meter. And here again, the form of Ishvara is shown to us, which is very powerful, here. So he says, Kaving Purana Manusha Sitaram. Kaving Purana Manusha Sitaram. Anoraniyam. Anoraniyam. I want to make sure. Samanusmaredyaha. Anoraniyam samanusmaredyaha retaha. Anoraniyam Anoraniyam samanusmaretaha. Sarvasya dhataram achintya rupam. Sarvasya dhataram achintya rupam. Aditya varnam tamasaf parastat. Aditya varnam tamasaf parastat. So here he is defining that Ishvara as Kaving, very omniscient, and Puranam, timeless. Anusha Sitaram, he's a commander of the subtlest of the subtlest, at the subtle level. And so let's contemplate upon him, so Anusmarit, the one who remembers him, who is also the protector of the incomprehensible, something which you cannot even see, Achintya Rupam, something which doesn't even have we can't even imagine a roop. So this one, and who is as brilliant as the sun, Aditya referring to the sun, referring to Aditya Varnam, who's brilliant as the sun, and who's beyond the darkness of ignorance. Tamasaha, referring to our ignorance, and Parastat, who's beyond that. So we'll go into a little more description of this next time. Okay. So we'll meet next week. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Just stop the live stream. Live stream. Yes.